I know for me, I maximize my time at the music school. I live an hour away from it. And I live on the south side of Atlanta, commute all the way up 4 days a week to the north side of Atlanta and have classes. So I know for sure that I maximize my time, and taking in every class, everything that they had to offer, whether it be classes about anything, cables, right? Mixing, mastering, studio classes or production classes, anything you could think of, sound design. I was just making sure to maximize my time while I was there.
Don't be mistaken about my grind. I can do this all the time. Greatness in me, so I shine. You're listening to one of a kind.
What's goody? It's your boy Nick Kayea saying it's a great day to be saved, great life to know Christ, and a great time to live the dream. Guys, this is episode 5, and I'm still rolling, and it's the second time I got a guest. So what that means is 2 people thought that what I'm doing is cool enough to say, hey man, I want to jump on your pod. So that makes me feel good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
So everybody, I got a guest. His name is DJ or Daniel. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but he's a cool dude. So matter of fact, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, bro.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Daniel Jefferson. I go by DJ. It's easier for people to remember. Yeah.
Are you a DJ?
No, I'm not a DJ.
He's not a DJ. He's not a DJ, all right? So don't say, hey, man, do you know what I don't like, bro?
What's that?
When people who aren't necessarily creative think that just because you do music that you just do everything with music. So you can DJ.
No. I'm not that multifaceted.
I had somebody who, it was just random. It was one of my students, and she was like, they're Indian, by the way, right? And she's like, we have this Indian festival coming up, and we want to know if you can DJ our party. And I was like,
that's how it works.
He said, you're a music guy, right? You're cool. You know how stuff works. I'm like, but guys, you have to respect the arts and the craft of being a DJ. Yeah. Everything has its own world. Everything has its own ups, downs, learning curves, all those different things. Yeah. But DJ, thank you for coming to the show. Daniel Jefferson. I didn't even know your last name was Jefferson until just now.
Yeah, Jefferson.
So I just met this guy. Maybe it was a few months ago, but we've had 3 conversations. Today is the 3rd conversation. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, literally.
We've had 3 conversations. But the reason why I think that's important is because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know how valuable conversations can be, right? And so I would say how we met, but I'm going to let him explain. So where'd you meet me at?
Yeah, so we met probably 6 months ago, I would say.
Okay.
I would say maybe about 6 months ago we met at a studio called Atlanta Sound Factory. And they had like a little mixer event. I was showing up just to connect, network with people. And I met Nick there, and I definitely could tell that, he was a very creative person and somebody who, I wanted to work with eventually. And yeah, everybody who I met there was awesome. It was just a really awesome event, great community.
He has to say that. I'm joking.
No, but yeah, everybody who I met there was super cool. But that's where we met, Yeah, that's
all right.
Where it happened.
Cool. Let me ask you this question, because we haven't had this conversation before. So most of the things that you guys are going to hear today is going to be strictly candid, off the top. I'm still learning who DJ is. He's learning who I am. But you said that you can tell that I'm a creative person. Yeah. How?
How can I tell? The way you carry yourself, man. I would say, I'm a pretty observant person, and I could just tell like the energy you were giving off. It was more so the questions that you were asking me. You were asking me, okay, so what are your thoughts on this? How do you pursue that? And just based off of that alone, at the discussion that we had at the event, I could definitely tell that you were a creative person. That was something that, I was drawn to and I was gravitated towards. So
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So if we can be transparent, if I can be transparent, around that time, my insecurity levels or my level of unsurety of myself was pretty high.
Right.
Pretty high. And I don't know what I said to you or what conversation that we had to make you feel as if I was super creative or thoughtful, which I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't have thought that from our conversation you would truly want to work with me.
No, definitely. Like I said, it was the questions that you were asking me, like, you know, about it's not just what do I do, but like why do I do it? You know, asking questions about more so like what is my perception, you know, or like, man, it's more than just the X's and O's, you know what I'm saying? And that's something that I definitely appreciated, because, you know, in events, things like that, or mixers, you know, a lot of people, it's very surface level, you know, it's just like a quick get to know, meet and greet kind of thing. But that was one thing that definitely stuck out to me.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. One thing that got on my nerves at that particular, what's the thing called? Mixer. Yeah. That thing. Nothing with the people, and definitely nothing with ASF. I love everything. I'm a member. But a lot of the questions was, hey, what do you do? Mm-hmm. Somebody literally came up to me, didn't even ask me for my name. Yeah. He said, hey, what you do? How long you been doing it? Mm-hmm. I'm like, what's up, bro? My name is Nick. What's your name? How you doing? How was your day? Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I feel like in our industry, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are very surfacey, or a lot of people, it's just, what can I get from you, or how can you help me, instead of how are you doing as a person? Yeah. Right? Because as you already know, and we'll talk more about this later, but since we're already here, as you already know, you provide a service. I'm not going to say what service he provides. I'm going to let him talk about that, but you provide a service. A lot of time, people are only dealing with you because you provide that service. Exactly. They don't care how you're doing. They don't care how your day is. To them, you're a robot. Do this for me. Make sure it's good. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Yep. It's so annoying. Mm-hmm.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. You know, I feel like what I'd like to think is like a very transactional kind of thing, you know, with a lot of people. And that's just kind of how it is, you know. I feel like I've kind of accepted that, you know, or kind of expected that going in. But, you know, I know who I am. You know, I know what my, you know, creativity is. I know what my desires are. I know what my goal is. So, you know, I just can't let any of that transactionness, you know, just get in the way of that, you know.
Facts. Mm-hmm. So, everyone, DJ/Daniel, what you want to be called, bro? What you want me to say?
It's easy for people to remember DJ.
All right, so know? Daniel.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't faze me.
You know what? I might call you Daniel, bro. Yeah, we'll see. But Daniel, can you let everybody know what it is that you do professionally, how old you are, how long you've been doing it? Let's just start there.
Yeah, so I'm a musician. I'm an engineer. I'll say producer.
Why you say producer?
Producer, I'll get to that in a sec. Okay. But I definitely engineer and musician. Music has been around me pretty much my whole life. I remember even when I was like super young, you know, I had like a little kid drum set, or just like, you know, playing keyboard. I got like taught keyboard lessons from one of the keyboard players at the church. Okay. So that's kind of like where the musician side came in. And then when I was in middle school and high school, I played tuba for 6 years. Okay. And that was really fun. I was in concert bands and things like that.
Well, let's stop right there. Let's not go too deep into it yet, right? Yeah. So let's start from where you are right now. So you said right now you're a musician and an engineer. Yep. All right. Do you work at a certain place or studio? Do you freelance?
Yeah. So I work at my home base right now is Tree Sound Studios.
No way. Not the Tree Sound Studios. Yes. Guys, this guy right here works at Tree Sound Studios. If you don't know about Tree Sound Studios, it is a very, very, very professional, great studio here in the Atlanta area. They do really good work. A lot of very successful artists go and have gone to Tree Sound Studios.
Yep.
So right now, I'm in the presence of a legend.
Oh, man. Not yet. We're on the way. We're on the way.
I'm in the presence of a legend. I'm calling it right now.
We're on the way. Yeah, man. Tree Sound. That's like my home ground right now. And that's where I'm at. It's been just an absolutely amazing experience.
Okay.
You know, it's been definitely a lot to learn. I've learned a lot. You know, it's life changing. It's honestly like a dream come true for me. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you're at Tree Sounds. And you said you've been doing music for a long time.
Yeah.
So let's go back in reverse and let's go back to the beginning. You said you started on the drums and the keys. What'd you start on first?
I don't remember what I started first. Like, I don't think I can remember pinpoint which one I started off first. I want to say maybe drums. You know,
remember?
My earliest memories are playing drums.
Okay, there you go.
That's my earliest memories, playing drums. It was even to the point where I would be getting like pots and pans, and I would get like lids on pots and like drum on them, or like I would get CDs and like I just remember getting creative, just doing random stuff.
Pretty cool.
But my earliest memories are playing drums.
Okay.
Yep. And then after that, I would say maybe like 8 or 9 is when I started getting my first piano lessons.
Okay.
I still have that keyboard to this day.
Really?
Still have it. It still works and everything. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's when I started getting piano lessons from the church that we used to go to. Shout out Tabitha. But yeah, she used to give me
Tabitha
piano.
was giving you a lesson?
Yeah, she was giving me piano lessons like every week and during Sundays at the church sometimes.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about that really quickly. When it came to the lessons, what type of things were you learning on the keys? Were you learning how to read? Was she teaching you chords? Or how
it was really from what I can remember, it was really a lot of just scales, you know, doing like scales on the keyboard and doing like chords and things like that. I think we did a little bit of reading. But I think mostly just scales and just like how to play keys with your left and right hand and, you know, coordination and things like that. So that's what I know for sure that I was learning from the start.
All right, so let's freeze right there. For those people who are learning the keys, or youth, young adults, how important is scales?
Scales are really, really important. I can't really even. It's like they're extremely important. They're good to help navigate around the keyboard. You know, they're great for, you know, learning what's the key of a song, right? Like tonally, where's the key of the song, and just knowing like whether it's a major scale, whether it's a minor scale. You know, whether you're playing it, whether it be in jazz or something like that, and you're playing 7th chords or 9th chords or something like that. All those things play into, from the root of where it's at is the scale that you're in, and that'll give you a lot of information. So that's, you know, almost everything that you do on a keyboard or on the piano, you know, really just goes back to the scales, you know. So that's where you want to start.
Yes. So musicians, and really musicians who are learning to be musicians, not you guys that already know what y'all talking about, but the ones who are learning, the ones who want to learn, any of my kids, if you're watching, or any youth that are watching, scales may seem redundant. It may seem boring, but you need to get used to doing the boring stuff, because once you can do the boring stuff, then you can really, really, really make music. There are people now who I know who, well, including myself, but you can put any song out there, and because they know the key and because they know the scales, they can either play the song, freestyle in the song, add counter melodies, all those different things, only because they're playing around in the scale. You don't need sheet music and all these things to tell you what to play when you understand the world that you're in when it comes to music.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
And so, like, even like the other day, I'll tell this quick story, and I'll be it. I went to one of my students, well, former students, she's still my student, but we're just not taking lessons right now. She had a concert at her high school, and she is kind of classically trained. That's where she's come from. But when she got introduced to me, I was like I can't tell you none of that.
No, yeah.
Here
Those
go the
classical
key.
players there, man.
Here go the key. Here go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here go your chord. This is your majors. This is your minors.
Right.
If you want to write songs, this is what you got to do. Blah 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 blah. And so now, when she introduced me to her friends, he does all of this, and it's just freestyling. He doesn't need any music, any sheet music to do anything. And I'm like,
yeah, yep.
You don't need sheet music. But now, if you can read sheet music and play, that is great.
Yeah,
I envy you guys.
And so that's the thing. That's like one thing that I really have never really worked on for myself. It's like I feel like I never picked up on reading sheet music and playing the piano at the same time. I wish I did. So now it's really just playing by ear or just listening to the song.
Yep.
You know, I definitely, if you put some sheet music in front of me, it would take me
a long
who
time.
knows how long to read it.
It'll be faster for me to hear the song and figure out the melody than for me to try to read each note by note. But those of you guys that can do it, I commend you. I applaud you guys.
No, definitely, and that's the skill you definitely want to keep up as well. You know, I know over time reading sheet music, if it's not something you do consistently, it'll definitely wear off over time.
Facts.
So you keep on it. Definitely keep on it.
Facts. All right, but so you said you did keys, drums, and then I remember you say something about the tuba.
Yeah.
Right,
so let's take it back to sixth grade year.
Sixth grade band.
Sixth grade band, man.
Playing the tuba.
Oh my gosh. So the thing was, when the middle school that I was at,
What school was it? Shout it out.
Flat Rock Middle School down in Fayette County.
Where is Flat Rock?
Flat Rock Middle School, Tyrone, Georgia, middle of nowhere.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was my middle school. And it was, I remember the year just started. We were doing tryouts, and I initially wanted to do percussion in band because the thing is, so I have 3 older brothers. My oldest brother was in orchestra at the middle school. My second oldest brother, he was also in band at the middle school.
Okay.
He played percussion.
All right.
And then my third oldest brother, he was also in band. He played saxophone.
Okay.
And so I also I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do band, but I wanted to do percussion. And so we were, doing auditions and things like that. And I remember the audition for band was playing like a basic rhythm, and we had to stomp and clap to a metronome, and we had to play the rhythm to the metronome. And I did not do good at all. Like I had no rhythm. I had yeah.
So did you not make it, or did you just decide to do something else?
So yeah, so he was like, shout out Mr. Price.
White teacher, black teacher?
He was mixed, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out Mr. Price. I'll get to Mr. Price in a second. But he was like, hey, you did good. All of our percussion spots are taken right now, but we have some tuba spots, And he's like, just think about it. And I remember I felt so terrible when I went home. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I mess this up? Like I play drums. Like how did I do this? I remember having a conversation with my parents, and like, you should do it. Just, try some, why not pick up a new instrument? You know? And so, from there, the rest is history. I mean, I was a very, very good tuba player. I really enjoyed playing it. I played it for 6 years. I played it all the way from 6th grade, to my, sophomore year. And it was literally just an awesome experience being in a concert band, being in bands. I remember the glory days at Flat Rock. We were actually one of the top bands in the whole Southeast region, and that's thanks to our band director, Mr. Price.
Okay.
He was pretty hardcore, taught us a lot, and I had a pretty close relationship because he obviously taught my older brothers. And so I had a pretty cool relationship with him, and he taught me a lot, about music, and just, I still love that music to this day. It's still a very big part of me, even though I haven't played a tuba in years. That's still a big part of me. So
okay. So let us know what the tuba taught you, because each instrument has its own assignment, characteristics. So what did it teach you when it comes to music? So
particularly in concert music, obviously the tuba is the giant big instrument. Everybody looks at it. So, well, first off, the first thing it taught me was bass clef. Learning how to read bass clef. Up until that point, I had never even touched bass clef. And so obviously having to learn, how things are charted differently in bass clef as opposed to treble clef. So that was the first thing. Second thing is like ear training wise, you as a tuba player are the bass of the band. And so like knowing the kind of, tonally what you carry, in terms of how you should be playing as opposed to the rest of the band, right? Because honestly, like most people may not know this, but the tuba is like one of the main instruments you're hearing. You're hearing the melody, you're hearing the clarinet, the flute, the trumpet, things like that. But the tuba is one of those instruments that you're also hearing because it's basically the bass. So I feel like those are probably the two biggest things. Another interesting thing is that it takes a lot of air to play through a tuba.
Yes,
you will run out of breath very quickly. So
I believe
things like training your lungs and knowing how to take big breaths and how to project and how to really push air, through your body. That's another big thing, especially when you start getting to like marching band and things like that. And you're not only are you playing the tuba, which already requires a lot of air, but you're also, physical and moving around, and you're having to project even louder. And so those are definitely some big things that I learned and experienced, playing the tuba.
Okay. So two things. One is just a comment. The comment would be that even your mouthpiece is bigger, so the way you buzz is different, and so you would have to, fix your mouth a certain type of way to get all the air out when you do buzz. Because I played the trumpet in middle school.
Okay.
For 6th, 7th, and 8th, but I didn't play it in high school because Central Gwinnett High School band was whack. And I said, ain't no way I'm going to high school and this is the music that we playing. And I'm trying to be cool. I play football. I want girls to like me. I'm not being in this band. Literally. I'm not doing it. But Shiloh High School's band was amazing, which I ended up transferring to, but I was in chorus instead.
Oh, okay.
But so that's one thing. But then now, since you were in band, like you said, you were the bass line. You were holding everything together. So I'm pretty sure that in the music that you produce and that you make now, you understand the bass so much.
I do. And it's helped, like, again, that's what I was saying, it's helped my ear a lot because, especially as a drummer as well, all the time, the bass player is what we're really looking at. We're listening to the vocalist or the lead melody, and we're listening to the bass player because that's that pocket that we have to really have to lock into. And so even on the production side of things, when I, do choose to produce, the bass line is something that I really like to have a lot of fun with and listening out and, see what I can, whether it's a bass synth or a bass guitar. That's something that I gravitate to along with the drums.
I feel you.
Yep.
So guys, for me, like I said, I played the trumpet, I played the keys, I played the guitar. The guitar was my first instrument.
Okay.
Then the trumpet.
Shout out guitar.
And, singing. And then I started picking up the piano like when I was like 15, 16, just teaching myself how to play. And a few people would show me different things from here and there. But when it comes to making music and producing, the last thing that I'm working on is the bass, which is bad.
Yeah,
it's the
foundation.
Bass, it's the foundation and the percussion, which are both the foundations. Yeah. Right. And so one thing that I want to do is learn how to play the drums. That's on my bucket list. And then the saxophone and the harp. Those are three instruments that I want to learn how to play.
The harp, man, that's an interesting one. It's first off, it's a beautiful instrument. I feel like it's a beautiful instrument. I've actually been fortunate enough to record a harp player, we've at the studio we recorded a harpist at Tree Sounds. We've recorded a harpist. I remember the first time doing it, and it was awesome. I mean, if you ever get the chance, definitely get into it. I'm
doing it.
It's gonna be a lot, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great instrument.
Okay, bet. But yeah, so with music, that's one of the things that when I'm making music, bass lines are fun, but what I don't know is like on the engineering side, what do I need to do in order to EQ this so the bass line or the bass can stick out. That's one thing I haven't learned yet when it comes to producing and engineering is I can have some fire beats, but it's mixing it to where everything is popping out the way they need to pop out. And so it sounds good. So like I have a couple of records where once it's mixed good, it's going to sound amazing.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how to do all those things, right? But no, let's go there since we're here. So when you're engineering and you are putting everything in its place, what is the biggest issue that you find when it comes to tracks that you receive?
Yeah, so well, I'm going to answer the question by sort of reframing it. It's not necessarily the issues that I find, but more so things that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Right. So when I'm receiving a track, whether I'm mixing it or something like that, the first thing that I'm looking for is just how things sound tonally. You know, if it's not if it's like vocals, you know, I want to make sure it's well recorded vocals. If it's like some live instruments like a drum kit or an electric guitar, like the things that I'm looking for is to make sure that it actually sounds good, you know what I'm saying, from the start. And that's going to make my job or whatever job moving forward that much easier. So that's probably the first thing. You know, typical issues that usually come up are, you know, that can be difficult are drums, because when you're recording drums, you know, you have a lot of microphones around the drum kit. You know, you have one on the snare, you have one on the kick, you know, you could have two on the kick. And so that can definitely bring out some problems because you have multiple microphones on one big loud source. And so that's definitely one problem. Obviously drums and bass, making sure that they can fit well together. What we call pocket, just like we want them to be able to fit in a pocket together. So making sure that the bass is not clashing with the drums, or like the kick drum is not clashing with the bass. That's another thing that I'm looking for. And then obviously vocals, you know, well-recorded vocals, making sure that they're able to sit in front of the track and make sure that they can mesh well with the track and nothing's standing out. Those are things that I'm usually listening out for and looking for, you know.
So for engineers out there who are just starting out or they've been doing it for a minute, what little small... of course, you don't want to give out your secrets, but what little small tidbit or nugget would you throw out there when it comes to separating your bass and your kick drums or whatever, like frequency wise? What type of thing are you looking for? That type of
So there's two things that I would recommend right off the bat, you know, and no matter what program you're working in, whether it be Pro Tools or Ableton or Logic, every program or DAW has this, but it's either EQ or sidechain. Those are probably the two biggest things that I would recommend, and compression as well. That's actually three: EQ, sidechain, and compression. A lot of times, you know, when you're playing a bass note, the kick drum and the bass note they're usually like in the same area, frequency wise. Like if you were to look at it. EQ, they're like in the same area. And so compression and EQ, you know, controlling the dynamics of the kick drum and bass will help you figure out where they can sit, you know. So I would feel like those are two or three, honestly, good tools to use.
Let me hold you right there real quick. What does dynamics mean? So
dynamics is basically volume, the difference in between the quietest sound and the loudest sound. So you know that on how hard you hit a kick drum is going to be a different level pretty much every time. And so dynamics is really referring to, you know, how loud or soft something is, or loud or quiet something is.
Good. So if somebody pulls up their EQ, right, and or they pull up the compression, right, and on the compression it has the dynamics where you can actually move it up or down, right? If you move it up, what does that mean?
So if you're moving up the dynamics, you're basically making your what we call like expansion. You know, if you're moving up your dynamics, you're making the sound more dynamic by making the quieter parts and the louder parts much louder, right? Meanwhile, the term compression comes from actually closing in those dynamics so that you're essentially, if you were to look at like a waveform, the loudest parts are, you know, waveform being like just like a clip, like an audio clip, you know. Compression is essentially making the waveform like smaller, right? So now your loudest parts are not as loud, and your quieter parts of the sound are louder, so that the sound sounds more even, right? So that's where the term compression comes from, and so utilizing that properly can really help you gain a lot more control of, like, especially the lower frequencies. So that's usually.
Okay, guys. So he said EQ, he said compression, and then he said one more thing. What was that?
Sidechain.
EQ, compression, sidechain. What in the world is a sidechain?
So sidechain, you can use sidechain either with EQs or compression.
Is sidechain a plugin?
So it's not a plugin.
All right.
It's not a plugin, but it's basically a way of using different plugins. So imagine, every time I hear a kick drum, I want the bass line to duck down in volume just a little bit.
Okay. The bass line meaning the
bass guitar or bass synth or whatever.
Okay.
Anytime that the kick drum hits, it's side chaining the bass line. So that way the kick drum can come forward a little bit more, and the bass line or bass guitar or whatever will tuck under it, and it doesn't muddy up the kick drum.
Okay.
Right.
Sidechain, compressions, EQs.
Yep.
Those are the first three things that you should look for when it comes to figuring out your low end. That's what
definitely for low end. But honestly, when it comes to the whole song or whatever track it is, really just volume balance. Volume balance, that's where it starts. A lot of times you'll hear mixes and something will be too loud or something will be too quiet, or the guitars will be too quiet or the vocals will be too loud. Like sometimes vocals are too loud and they don't mesh well with the rest of the track. So all of that honestly really just starts with volume and just at your fader. So if you can get a good volume mix, or what they call like a rough mix, and get everything blending well for really just how loud they are, then you can start using tools like EQ, compression, side chaining things, and whatever tool that's available to you to really sculpt things and get them sitting exactly how you want them to sit.
Okay, that sounds good. I hope you guys are paying attention, especially if this is something that you want to get into or that you're already into, but you're finding trouble, right? And so, like I said, this guy's only 22 years old, right? But he's getting some experience. He's working at a really good studio, and he's producing some really good work. Right. So if I were you, I would pay attention. And, if you guys are listening and you think that you guys have some good advice that you want to throw in the comments, go ahead and throw that in the comments as well. All thoughts are welcome.
Yeah, they're definitely welcome.
Unless it's negative. If it's negative, I'm deleting it because I don't have no time for negativity. So don't come in here with no foolishness.
That part.
Thank you. All right. But let's go back to high school. So you stopped the band when you were 15. What happened after that?
So, my sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year, that's when I stopped band. I actually stopped going to the high school I was going to. It was Sandy Creek High School.
Okay. I heard of Sandy Creek.
Sandy Creek, yeah. It's like literally right across the street from Flat Rock.
Okay.
What was interesting about that is, like, obviously, since they're right across the street from each other, pretty much everybody from Flat Rock's going to go to Sandy Creek. And even from there were some people who I knew from elementary school that I'd been going with to school. And so there's a lot of people at Sandy Creek who I knew since I was even down in elementary school. So at the end of my sophomore year, I actually moved from Sandy Creek to going strictly online. I did my junior year and senior year completely online.
That's great.
Yeah, it was definitely a big shift. It was a hard shift. I will say that it was a very hard shift. It was very challenging because it felt like I was giving up everybody who I knew since I was a kid, basically, to spending 8 hours staring at a computer screen online.
Why'd that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
It happened because I was it was a rough time. I definitely got, bullied quite a bit, and just people and socially, we all know how high school is, but it definitely weighed on me. My grades were dropping and wasn't able to get things done all the way, and it was just a challenging time, so.
And you was a band kid playing the tuba.
And I was a band kid playing the tuba, the band was one thing that was holding me down. It was so much fun, but outside of that, the rest of school wasn't good for me. It wasn't healthy. And so I was very mad at my parents for a while, for literally just pulling me out, but even to this day, I still thank them because it was definitely like the best decision, at the time. And what was interesting about that was, it's funny because I I can't pinpoint which exact year that was, but after my junior year, I moved to online school. A year later, COVID happened, and so at that point, everybody was online. But I had already been online, and I was already at a place. I wasn't necessarily scrambling around to find.
Wait. Hold on. So your senior year was a COVID year?
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm laughing, let me look at this camera. The reason why I'm laughing, I'm not old, but when COVID happened, I already been married. Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to pay bills. Yeah. I ended up teaching at a school in 2020 as the music teacher. And so every time I hear somebody's experience about COVID and they tell me they were in school, I'm like, dang, you a kid. Yeah, man. Which is crazy. But so so this has nothing to do with, I guess, music to say, but we go through things in life and things happen and it's God's plan and we don't know that it's God's plan.
We don't know.
Right. And so there are times where our parents may do certain things or certain circumstances may happen and we feel like we're adversely being affected, but that's literally God just moving us and sheltering us and keeping us in the right space. Yeah. So for me, when I was 14 years old, like I said, I went to Central Gwinnett and then I got transferred to Shiloh High School. Right. My mom is a teacher at Shiloh High School. My mom is the teacher at Shiloh High School.
Shout out, Mom.
Shout out, I guess.
Shout out, Mom.
Yeah, she was the teacher of the year for so many years. Oh. And so I went from being Nick Kayea, the guy that played football, the cool dude, not necessarily cool dude, but the cool dude. Like, I'm a good person, right? Yeah. From there to going to Shiloh High School to being Miss Kaye's son, right? And so microscope on me, all the adults know me, all the seniors and juniors, they know me, but they don't know me because of who I am. They know me because of my mom, right?
It's funny that you say that. I'm laughing because when I was a freshman at Sandy Creek, my second or third oldest brother, one who's like right above me, he was a senior at the time. And so everybody was calling me, oh man, my brother's Chris, oh man, you little Chris, what's up, little Chris? Yep. They're calling me little Chris instead of calling me who I was. So that's why I'm laughing at that.
And those type of things, it's good and it's bad. Yeah. Right. Because one, that puts eyes on you, but two, is like, I'm not little Chris. I am little Chris. That's my older brother, Chris, but I'm Daniel. Exactly. I'm DJ. I'm my own person. I'm my own man. And then when I'm not like my brother or I'm not like my mom, then you already think of me a certain type of way instead of just getting to know who I am as a person, right? But when I transferred to Shiloh, that's when I met my music teacher, Mr. Johnson. So the same way he had Mr. Price, I got Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is the GOAT. He's the best. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today is because of Mr. Johnson, right? But it's funny that you said the same thing, and then my boy T, he said the same thing. I forgot what his teacher's name was. Miss Wilson. Yeah, Miss Wilson. And so the common theme from this is, as children, as youth, we had somebody who believed in us and gave us what we needed for us to still be doing what we're doing today. Yeah. While while a lot of other people was thinking, oh, music is lame, or you're in the choir, or you're doing this. But it's like, no, like, this is what I was made to do. This is what I love to do. And now some of you same people, now y'all trying to do music. Yeah. Now y'all trying to rap. Now you hitting me up because, this is what I do, and now you trying to do it too. Yep. When it was like, you could have been doing this as a kid, but you were worried about being cool or playing sports, which I play sports too. I did both, but it's, those things. Man, this is getting good. And you know what? Since it's getting good, if you haven't done so already, what I need you guys to do is like the video and share it too. Send it to somebody who you think needs to know this information. And last thing, but certainly not least, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. So whenever we come out with new content, you guys will be the first to know. Thank you. But all right, so you graduated from high school, online or whatever. And then what happened?
So coming out of high school, things were still kind of on the down for me. I wasn't really graduating high school. It's like, okay, what's next? I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to go to college. all of my older brothers, my dad.
Whoa, wait. You didn't want to go to college?
No,
oh,
I did not.
No. What a heathen, not wanting to go to college. How will he ever survive? How will he ever survive if he doesn't get his college education? Oh, man. Go ahead.
So I didn't want to go to college. There's a lot that's going on around that time. I was working at my first job, which was at Chick-fil-A.
All right. Shout out to Chick-fil-A.
Shout out to Chick-fil-A. I was working there at the time. I was doing full-time. And Chick-fil-A honestly became my everything at the time because, I didn't like school. I wasn't doing anything else. So what do? I just get out the house and go work a shift at Chick-fil-A, and I'll be there. And so I was working at Chick-fil-A.
Got friends.
I had friends and things like that. But I still had no idea what I wanted to do, right? And so it's either keep working at Chick-fil-A, pursue that, get a different job, or go to the military because all my older brothers, my dad, my uncle, pretty much cousin, everybody was in the military. Everybody or prior military. So it was either, keep working or just go to the military. But at that time, after I graduated, I was also attending a music school down on the south side in Peachtree City called Music School International. Shout out Mr. B. Shout out Terrence. And so from there, I was taking kind of 101 lessons on piano, production, and mixing and things like that. And so from there, it was probably about 6 or 7 months post graduation. I was still working a whole bunch. And I remember one day I was at the music school and they were like, well, what are you going to do? You going to go to college? What are you thinking about doing? And I was like, I have no idea. I've got no clue. And I remember Mr. B telling me maybe you should try going to a music school. Why don't you try pursuing that? And I hadn't thought about that at all. I thought college is just going to some university, going there for 4 years, studying something I don't want to study, just a waste of money, a waste of time. I did not want to do that. And I was and I remember in my heart, I just I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be, it's just going to be like high school with more freedom. And I can't put myself through that, because now it's costing me, right? It's costing me money. And so from there, they, recommended me to go try music school. And so we did some research and, obviously I found out about SAE, Art Institute, and there comes AIM. And so Atlanta Institute of Music and Media, it's in Duluth. From there, they had an open house event. I believe this was September. Of 2021.
All right.
Yeah, September 2021, they had an open house event or something like that. Me and my mom went up there. It was an hour drive from our house. When we went, and I remember going to the school and going to that open house event, and I'm like, this place is crazy. Everybody here does music? And going in each of the rooms and listening to the teachers talk and, going to the performance that they had a performance and they had some musicians out there playing and talking to all the different instructors and the drum coaches and the engineers and everybody. And I was like, everybody here does music. And I'll never forget that experience. I walked out of there with the confidence, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is it. This is where I'm going. I'm not looking anywhere else. This is it, and haven't looked back since then. It was definitely just a awesome experience. And I started that following semester.
Okay. So let's
AIM.
At AIM, right? So let's freeze right there for a quick second. So guys, there are a few nuggets in this conversation, right? One, he trusted his gut.
Yep.
Right. 2, he went to a place that was made for him. A lot of us, including myself, we have influence from our parents that say you have to go to college. I'm not telling you not to go to college. Don't say that Nick said you can't go to college. You trying to get some water, bro?
No.
Oh. Don't say that Nick said don't go to college. Mom, I did not tell your child not to go to college. I didn't do that. All I'm saying is a regular college may not be what's best for them. It is very important that you put your children in the space to where they can thrive, where they can grow, and where they can be themselves, right? Not everybody's going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Not everybody's going to be a teacher. Not everybody's going to get a regular 9-to-5 job. You know, everybody's not that type of way. And when you are a creative, when you are a genius, when God has made you, when God has made you to do what it is that we do, we must be in spaces to where where we're doing what it is that we were made to do. If not, life is miserable. Yeah. Life is terrible. Ain't nothing worse than working a 9-to-5 and you're not doing what you love. Mm-hmm. And it's terrible. Yeah. It's torture. It's not pleasant. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm very happy that you stuck with that and you did what you were supposed to do. Yeah. On my end, I went to college because I wasn't going to any music school because my parents wasn't paying for that. That just wasn't going to happen. Yep. I went to University of West Georgia, and I was undecided at first because what I wanted to do was music. But at West Georgia, all they had was classical stuff and, you know, learn how to read these sheet music and like that type of music major, right? Marching band music major, you know, that type of thing. But I'm an artist, but they didn't have nothing for artistry. Yeah. Right. Which I'm surprised why these universities don't be having a lot of things for artistry, but it is what it is. And so I ended up doing teaching, right? Because everybody told me I'm such a great teacher. Mm-hmm. I'm so great with kids, which is true. But I ended up changing my major. God led me to go to mass communications, which I ended up doing film and video production, right? Which put me back in the creative space. Yep. And I learned how to work the cameras. Yeah. I learned how to write scripts and all those different things. And so life didn't make sense for me until I got to the place to where I was doing what I was created to do. Right. Right. And the same thing for you. Mm-hmm. You was working at Chick-fil-A, you know, you did the music thing for a little bit, but it wasn't until you got to AIM to where you was like, all right, I'm back in the right zone. Yeah. It wasn't since you left, what do you call it, band. Mm-hmm. And it was like, everything was right in band. Yeah. Who cares about my other classes? Right. But everything was right in band. Yep. And now I found myself again, which is amazing. And it's beautiful.
And that's why I'm really thankful, man, because I know only God, only God could have really drawn me to that and, right situation and put me where I needed to be. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm thankful and as passionate about it as I am, because like, what else would I be doing? What else would I be doing? You got no clue, so that's why I'm super thankful about it.
Good. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this. We're just walking through the steps, right? Because some people may be where you are right now to where now they have chosen to go to a music school. Yeah. So while you were at the music school, what was your experience?
So I'll first say that I know for me, I maximize my time at the music school. I live an hour away from it. And I live on the south side of Atlanta. Commute all the way up 4 days a week to the north side of Atlanta and have classes. So I know for sure that I maximize my time, and taking in every class, everything that they had to offer, whether it be classes about anything, cables, right? Mixing, mastering, studio classes or production classes, anything you could think of, sound design. I was just making sure to maximize my time while I was there. So my first year at AIM, because the program that I went in it was a degree program, but they also allowed instrument classes and things like that. So I originally applied to AIM for drums. So I went into their drum program. So my first year of classes was nothing but drums, like literally just drums every day, whether it be technique classes, reading classes, coordination courses. We had to learn 40-something songs, for, stage performances and studio performances and things like that. So that was really what my first year was, having classes go out till like midnight of just drums. So that's what I was doing for my first year. And then the program kind of shifted after that towards production and engineering classes. And from there, that was honestly where I literally really learned a lot about engineering, because before that I didn't know anything about it. I didn't really, all I knew was just some stuff from producing and I knew about Ableton and the stuff that I had learned previously at MSI. But it was really from there when I really started saying, okay, this is how this could be done, and learning it on a more professional level. And so that's what I was really doing at my time at AIM, was really getting the foundation of like engineering and things like that, as well as really enhancing my drumming as well. Because shout out Craig, shout out Chris Cook, shout out RJ, and everybody over there at AIM, the people who I was, in classes with, and, just taught me so much, about music.
Smooth. What was the worst part?
The worst part about AIM? The worst part about AIM, or just, it's more of a me thing than it really was about the school itself. But it's more of like self-image and competition, right? You're in an environment where you're surrounded by there's a musician or a producer. Everybody's trying to make it, everybody's trying to learn everything they can so they can go out in the world and do that thing. And you're going to see people who are better at certain skills than you are. And so I know one thing for me was what made that kind of difficult for me was not comparing myself to other people. That was one, I would say, probably made things way more difficult than it really needed to be. Because I remember my very first year, my first semester, I was, walking into school, I was nervous, and I'm hearing all these other musicians play, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm nowhere near that skill set. Like, I can't, there's no way I could do that. There's no way I could sound like that. And, just working through that and reshaping that mentality of like, no, yes, I can do this. I will do this kind of thing, was really important for me. But I know for sure that was probably a big challenge, or not probably, it was a very big challenge while I was there.
All right, I like that, and I respect that too, because a big issue that a lot of us have, and I would dare say almost everybody that is an artist or musician or an actor or some type of creative, is the problem with comparison. Right? Am I good enough, or I'm better than that person, and so since I'm better than that person, they're beneath me. Right? There's hierarchical thing that exists that should not exist, because we're all supposed to be doing this because we love it. We're all supposed to be doing it because there is some type of art that we're trying to create, something that we're trying to convey. But I'm going to use the word industry. This creative industry has turned from creating intentional art to I'm the best. Pay me money. I'm the best. And that's the problem that I see now with people that I meet and encounter, or just what we see, on social media. Rarely am I seeing art that has a purpose, art that has intention, and people who are doing it for the right reasons. There's a lot of people out there who are doing it for the right reasons. I see that, but rarely is that being put out there. For sure. So I think going back to when we started the conversation, when you were saying, or our first conversation, is that you can see that in me, that I'm a creative and that I was different, or our conversation was different from other conversations that you had, is because God stripped away from me the comparison thing of wanting to be the best. Because the facts of the matter is, I'm not the best. You're not the best. Who is the best? And whoever is the best is not the best because somebody's better than them. But what makes somebody better than somebody else?
I mean, God sees us all the same way at the end of the day, right? So it's really, at that point, it's really not about better or worse, you know? So,
which is very true. So after AIM, then you got the job at Tree Sounds?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like winding down on my last few semesters at AIM. And I was looking around because I wanted to start working so part of the program that they do at AIM is what they call exit interviews, where, they help you set up your resume, give you some interviews and things like that. And they actually kind of steer you, they'll talk with you and they kind of steer you in what direction you want to go in. And if there's a connection there, you could be graduating with a job, which is something that I really appreciated with AIM, is they do their best to help you out on the way out. And so I wanted to be prepared for that. So I was starting looking around for jobs and things like that. And I reached out back to MSI on the south side, and I was talking to Mr. B, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for jobs. Do you have any? And he was like, well, let me connect you with Terrence. And so I got reconnected with Terrence, and Terrence was like, hey, I'm working at the studio with Tree Sound, and I've been here for X amount of years. We've got intern spots available. And so from there, the rest is history. I started, like a couple weeks later, I had an interview with Tree Sound, and, I interned there, and I've been working my way up ever since and been able to work with, great people.
So do this for me real quick. Talk about your experience from being an intern to actually getting a job. How did that work?
So intern, whatever you think about intern is probably something that I did. Intern, whether it be making a run, a lot of clients will request food in the middle of the session, so it's your responsibility to go run and get the food. Making sure the building is clean, maintaining a presentable environment, after a session or during a session, watching the front door, checking people in and out of their sessions, building maintenance, answering the phone, making coffee, baking cookies, all of it.
Wow.
That's really what the intern process is. But additionally, that is maximizing your time of learning as much about the building while you're there. So yes, you are doing intern stuff, but you're also there to learn as well. So learning the rooms, knowing how to use the gear, especially at a studio like Tree Sound or any commercial studio for that, there is a lot of learning that needs to happen. For you to be able to work with clients on a more professional level, you've got to know the building. And so that was kind of like my process at Tree Sound was, as an intern, was not only was I in classes at AIM, so I would be like in class at school and then go to the studio for the rest of the night, but I was making sure to maximize my time at the studio as well as an intern. So, some days I'm lifting up speakers and moving stuff around and reorganizing and cleaning toilets, all of it. And so that's really what, the process of intern was. And so closer to when I started graduating, I could tell that management, knew that I was, starting to get more comfortable with the building and knowing how to work things and, could start trusting me as an assistant. And so that's kind of the role that I shifted in, and that was how I was able to get hired on as an assistant engineer. And so from there, as assistant engineer is honestly where the work really started. Like, as an intern, you're doing work and you're doing what you need to do, but I feel like assistant engineer is really where the work starts, because as an assistant engineer, not only are you wanting to continue to learn, but you also need to know, like, how do I start building my own clientele? Or, as a role of a second engineer in the room, you've got to keep the room running no matter what's going on in the session. If the engineer has to step out, you've got to be able to keep the session going. Any technical problems, there's a lot more that goes into the role of assistant engineer that most people, kind of think. And so from there, I was able to get hired on and start working sessions. And then the rest is just, process of just continuing to go. So yeah, that's kind of like the process, that I went through of not from starting there as an intern and then moving up and then getting hired on and,
Okay. So are you an assistant engineer now, or are you an engineer?
So assistant engineer / engineer, I'm still kind of in that process. A big thing that really kind of helps, honestly, like, there's not a specific title, what I'm saying, that differentiates the two. But it's more about, like, the more people you can bring into the studio, is the more successful the studio and you will be. Okay. And so that's kind of like the role that I'm in now as assistant / engineer. A lot of times I am working with other engineers on sessions, especially, some of the bigger sessions that have either high level clients or just a lot going on in a session. Most times there needs to be 2 engineers working a session. And so that's where that will come into play. But, other sessions that I've either engineered on my own or whoever the client is really just working to, make sure Tree Sound is a comfortable and welcoming place for the client, the artist, whoever, the producer, and building that relationship.
All right, so you guys still rocking with me? I appreciate it. What I need you guys to do is, again, like the video, share, and subscribe. Okay? Thank you so much. All right, let's get back to this content. So, are you allowed to talk about the different people that you work with?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Only because I don't know what's off limits / what is. I can say a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say a couple of them.
All right. Well, who have you worked with?
So, I mean, one thing that I do really love about Tree Sound that I really appreciate is how versatile it is. A lot of studios in the Atlanta area, it's really just hip hop and rap. That's all they are. But one thing I found about Tree Sound is it's actually very versatile. So I've been able to be on sessions and work with R&B, jazz, hip hop, orchestras, strings, folk music, all kinds of stuff, which is something that, so if we think like local bands, like indie bands that are in the Atlanta area, I've been able to work on a session with a band called Mayday Parade. I assisted them one time. Just recently we did an event with the radio station called 99X. They had a band from London called Good Neighbors, which is pretty well known. And yeah, some other pretty high level artists. I've been really fortunate and thankful to be put on some sessions with some very well known clients, people that you hear on the radio. And anything in between.
All right, so let's talk about this really quickly, and then we'll start wrapping it up soon. When you have been around these high level artists, what have you noticed about their creative process?
Man, so one very well-known artist in particular that I was doing a session for, so they booked the studio for 4 days. Here's a bit of a story. So this particular week, it was my birthday week.
Okay.
And I got put on this
birthday?
January 16th.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was put on this session with this very high-profile client, an artist, and they booked the studio for 4 days, 12-hour sessions, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And I was put on as an assistant, second engineer. And so their specific creative process was, they wanted a drum kit mic'd up. They wanted, several keyboards set out. They wanted a guitar area. They wanted bass. They wanted to have like a area where they could hook up their laptop. They wanted to be able to record vocals. They wanted to be able to go around the room and do anything and everything. And so not only was one setting up for that extremely time consuming and trying to figure out how to, accommodate that for them, but really the fun really came in is just seeing them work. So once the room was set up, honestly, me and the other engineer, we were kind of hands off and just letting them do their thing. And it was really awesome to see. I mean, like just seeing the artists in their zone, going from, and this is an artist who's very talented, they can play multiple instruments, and they were just going around and just having at it, I'm just saying, for hours. And we were there till, again, I was pulling like 14, 15-hour days, making sure the room was going. And, I was kind of like a fly on the wall during the session and just, keeping to myself and staying low key, doing my job, but at the same time taking everything in. I mean, it was awesome seeing their creative process. Again, just a talented singer, musician that they were. And so that was one of probably the coolest sessions. And then literally my birthday was the last day of that session was my birthday. And then that same week, another very high profile artist booked the studio for the entire weekend. And so that was interesting because it was very specific things that we needed to accommodate because they actually booked the entire building. It wasn't just like one room. They booked the entire building, so nobody was allowed in. And just setting up for that, like I had to set up the microphone, I had to set up the room, I had to patch in and out gear, and I had to make sure that the room was ready for that client or that artist to record in. And so just making sure that their creative process and their things that they need was fulfilled. So it was a very busy week, but it was just being there in the room, with those artists and just seeing how they work is a really, really cool experience.
Okay. Has there ever been somebody that you were in the room with and you was like, these people don't know what they're doing?
Yes.
How frustrating is that, or how does that make your job or harder?
So it definitely is frustrating. I would say the number one thing is just trying to remain as calm as possible, get my emotions out the way. If it's, well, first off, I don't think it hasn't happened with a very high level client that I'm in a room with and they don't know what they're doing, because they obviously know what they're doing to some extent. That would usually happen like either less experienced or independent artists and things like that, where they're still kind of working through and finding their process. And so the best thing I can do as the engineer is help them. You know what I'm saying? I can't just sit there and complain. I've seen engineers just let stuff slide and complain and just not have a good rapport with the artist. You can't do that. So my position is helping the artist out as best you can, making them feel comfortable, but at the same time helping them record or produce or do whatever they need to do to get the best sound so they can walk out the door feeling good. Even though it can be frustrating at times and it can be time consuming or even technical errors, all that stuff, we kind of have to get that out the way to, making sure that the artist is as comfortable as possible.
Okay. So that makes some sense.
Yep.
So I have two more questions to ask you.
Okay.
All right. The first question is, where are you going when it comes to your desires for music or creativity or your life? What's your plan?
Yeah. So right now my current plan is really just expanding my immediate circle with, artists and people that I know, and really building a community around myself of people who I feel comfortable working with, that I'm looking forward to work with. I find a lot of times either sessions that I've done or people I've worked with, it's like kind of like a one and done thing, where they'll come in, they'll record a song, or we'll work onto a song together, and after that the rest is like out the window. I don't necessarily want that. I want to be able to build and meet people around me and maximize the connections that I have, to build great relationships, because at the end of the day, the industry that we're in is about knowing people. The more people you know, ultimately that's better things moving forward for you. So I'm not just trying to meet people just to meet people, but I want to build relationships with people. So that's my immediate goal. And then long term, I've always kind of had I'd sometimes have the perception of like, oh, I kind of want to do everything, but I know I just need to find that immediate lane of where it'll be most successful for me. Like I've even been looking and getting into like live sound and things like that, like working concerts, like doing even church gigs like this. That's really popular around here. And so that's kind of like my long term is just making sure that I can get to where I need to get, ideally building out my own studio or my own place where I can work with people, and really just doing what I love to do and being able to be successful in it. That's my long-term goal.
Okay.
So
that sounds good.
Yeah.
My next question / last question, which may not be my last question, we'll see, is what is some advice that you can give to engineers out there? People, let's know. What are some advice that you would give to aspiring engineers?
Advice that I'll give to aspiring engineers, man. I will say the world of engineering, there's a lot of technical things that come along with it. I'm a person where I've always loved technology, but I've always loved music. So I always thought that like it had to be one or the other. I always thought it was only tech or it was only music. But honestly, engineering is kind of that blend of the two. Like you're dealing with technology and you're dealing with different things to be able to make music. And so my advice is to look at it from that perspective. You know, engineering, it can be very daunting. Like I said, there's a lot of technical things that's involved with it, and the world of engineering can get very detailed, you know.
I bet.
And so, I mean, just like anything, right? It can get very detailed. So that's my first advice, is really just look at it from the perspective is at the end of the day, you're still there to make music. Or even if it's not music, like you could be engineering for film, you could be engineering for post-production and things like that. Like even in that perspective, you are ultimately still there to create a world. You're there to create a sound. You're there to create an experience for a consumer. So that's my number one advice for aspiring engineers. I would also recommend just like, you know, really listen to the people who are successful. You know, they definitely have something to share. Listen to your mentors, you know, like my mentors, I'm listening to them. I'm taking in everything, you know. And that's really like my perspective is like, I'm not trying to make myself fit into this one genre. I'm not trying to make myself fit into this one way of doing things. I'm trying to take in everything, right? I'm trying to take in everything and really hone in on building what God has for me. That's really my, you know, perception on it, you know. So that's what I would really advise up and coming engineers is really, obviously you've got to crunch the numbers, you've got to study, you've got to, you know, you've got to watch the YouTube videos. You've got to go to, you know, if you choose to go to school, you know, really learn everything that they're teaching you. But at the end of the day, you know, you're there helping create an experience. You know, it's something you're experiencing yourself, but you're also there to help facilitate an experience. So if you approach it with that kind of perception, I know for sure moving forward, it'll definitely help you out. So
Good. So what's one thing that people don't know about engineers that they think that they should?
So yeah, what do people need to know about engineers that they don't? So when you're an engineer and you're working with an artist or a musician, you know, there's a lot that kind of falls on you as the engineer to help produce or help get the sound of the song. So, you know, me coming from like a recording studio where we're doing a lot of recording, like a lot of that falls right then and there in the session. So some things that people don't know about engineers is not only are you going to be mixing the song and help like blend the sounds, whether it be volume and things like that, but also when it comes to recording, the engineer is there to really capture the sound and help facilitate that process of getting an idea or a sound or whatever it may be. You know, to getting the process of engineering is really getting it to that final product that we listen to, that we see on TV, that we go to the theaters and listen to while we're watching a movie. Right. The engineering process is really something that a lot of people don't know is really from start to finish, you know, at that point.
Okay. So one thing that is good to realize is that there are many different parts and many different facets when it comes to being an engineer or being a producer or being a musician or being a singer or being a filmmaker or being a camera person or being an editor. There are so many different places and spaces where you can do what it is that you've been trained to do and get paid for it, right? In so many different ways. And so being an engineer, like he said, is not just being in the studio and clicking record and making sure that somebody's rap song goes well, right? There are many different avenues in the engineer space that you can do work, you know, like you said, live sound, you know, or being an engineer on a movie set, right? And so what I would advise for you guys to do, whether you are a youth, young adult, or somebody that's just getting in the game or somebody who's been in the game, is don't be afraid to explore all the different avenues in the area of study or in the field that you are, you know, moving in and working in. And there may be some things that you do and you're like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do. But you may find something else that you like to do that's just a little bit different, you know. So for actors, some people may not want to be, you know, film actors, but they may feel comfortable in the commercial acting space. Or they may be comfortable doing, you know, business, doing business videos, and they can make a living doing that. So there's so many different things that you guys can do to make money in this creative space, but you have to be able to be willing to try. You have to be willing to bump your head, and find it.
And what's really interesting is like the industry, this specific industry and entertainment, it can be difficult to get things started, you know. So the more that you can learn, it'll definitely benefit you, and being multifaceted. Like I know for me, being a musician helps me be a better engineer, and being an engineer helps me be a better musician. Yeah. So like the more multifaceted you are, that's really what's going to help you. Mm-hmm. I know for sure, there are a lot of times where I see engineers out there who don't know anything about music or don't really know anything about audio. They're just there to, make beats or click buttons or stare at Pro Tools or whatever it is. But, once you really step outside of that, you'll learn so much more that'll even help grow that specific, aspect that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, guys, we've been talking, and hopefully you guys have been listening. Yeah. Daniel has done a great job when it comes to explaining his process, right? The reason why this is important is because everybody has a process. This guy is only 22. By the time he's my age, by the time he's 29, about to turn 30, he's going to have accumulated and done so many more things, from now. But all the work that he's done already has made him into the man that he is right now, right? So from, learning the keys and learning the drum and playing the tuba and then, being homeschooled, but then going to MSI and then going to AIM. Like the reason why AIM worked was because he went to MSI. The reason why MSI worked was because he was playing the tuba and band. The reason why the tuba worked was because he was playing the keys. So he still plays the keys now and the produces and different things like that. But allow your journey to be your journey. Allow your timeline to be your timeline.
Exactly.
His timeline is great for him. My timeline is great for me. Some of the things that we had has intertwined, but there are also some talents that he has that I don't have, and there's some talents that I have that he doesn't have. But together, we can do a lot more, right? And so one thing that's extremely important is that we are proud of who we are, and we are proud of our journey and our story, because that is what makes us who we are. Our journey and our story makes us a better engineer, and makes us a better producer, and makes us a better talk show host.
Exactly.
So I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yep.
We got to work. We got to do one song.
Yeah, no, we're going to make it happen.
We got to start off with one song. I already have one in mind. But I guess the question I'll have for you, right? Because I have a song called Bless My Soul. I played a little bit in the last episode. But Bless My Soul is very simple for now. It's me playing the keys and singing, right? But I want to add a bass guitarist to it and a drummer as well.
Okay.
I think that they can do their stuff in their own places and send me their stems, right? But you would probably say it's better to do it in the studio, right? What would you say?
Really, honestly, the studio starts with just having a laptop, small interface and a couple microphones. You can get a lot done with just that, But honestly, sometimes that's where going to an actual studio / recording space can really benefit you, I know for sure, especially at Tree Sound with the great collection of gear, the great engineers, the great everything that's at that studio, you're going to get a great sound from there. But another one of my mentors, Kevin, he something that he always preaches is like, you can get a lot done with just 2 microphones or just as little as microphones as you need. And so even if you're recording in your bedroom or if you've got like a home studio or something like that, you could really get a lot done and good sounding drums or bass guitar just from there. So I would definitely recommend experimenting, with whoever, you're working with and experiment with what you have, making sure you can get the best sound with what you have. And then from there, that's how you can really, see if, going to a studio to get that specific sound that you want is what you need. But yeah, you know, and especially like with bass guitar, you could just plug that straight into your interface and then you've got bass guitar there. So make sure you get the sound that you need, you know, listen back and, you know, talk with whoever your drummer is, hopefully me, or whoever.
Oh, yeah,
know,
you do play the drum.
You know, something like that.
Facts, yeah.
So just make sure you get the good sound that you need.
Okay.
But for sure, you know, go into Tree Sound or whatever studio, you know, you're going to get some good sounds out of there.
All right, after we wrap up, I'm going to show you the record so you can hear it.
Bet.
That's what we'll do.
That's a bet.
So, guys, I want to show him my record. It ain't got nothing to do with y'all, but I wanted to show my record. So, DJ, thank you so much for joining the Respect My Genius podcast. The reason why this guy is on the podcast is because he's a genius, right? You can't make it on a podcast if you're not a genius. Mm-hmm. But what this is telling me is that there are so many geniuses out there. A lot of us are geniuses in our own right? But the genius didn't start last week. It started when you was a kid being taught and mentored by that lady at your church because the genius taught you, right? So the same way how I talked about how Mitch helped me and Mr. Jennings and Ms. Carwile helped me and Mr. Johnson helped me. And this is a web. It's a connective thing, right? Nobody's successful by themselves. Everybody's successful because, you know, somebody taught, somebody helped, they met somebody along the way, and that person said, hey, you know what? I want to help you, right? And so one thing that we need to remember is that we cannot do this thing by ourselves. We cannot be successful by ourselves, and more importantly, we cannot make a change by ourselves. Yep. The only reason why I'm doing this podcast is because God told me to do the podcast over a year ago, but I was too scared to start because I was like, who wants to listen to me? What I got to talk about? Yeah. I don't got nothing out there. I'm not a big name artist or whatever.
A whole lot of I'm not. So that negative self-talk is just gotta, I struggle with it too. Yeah. So it's just like, it's something that it really gets in the way. So no, I hear you.
It really gets in the way. Rule number 4, so I'm the owner of the Creative Village, which is when I work with the kids. And rule number 4 is believe in yourself. Rule number 5 is try your best. Yeah. The thing is, it's so easy for me to tell my kids to believe in themselves and tell them to try their best. When it comes to me, I got to practice what I preach. Oh, yeah. Right. And so even like when I started off and I said it's episode 5, I'm so happy I'm doing episode 5 because this is me believing in myself to get this thing done. Yeah. Right. So I want you to continue to believe in yourself, for you to continue to try your best, for you to continue to put yourself out there because you're in a space to where you're working at a good studio. You have good mentorship. You believe in God, and you're anointed to do what you do, right? So I thank you again so much for joining the pod. Yep. One thing I need you to do before we finish off is I need you to look to that camera right there. Tell everybody your name, your Instagram, where they can follow you, where they can listen to your music, all that good stuff. And if you have one more word of encouragement, go ahead and share it.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. My name is Daniel Jefferson, DJ, whatever it's easier for you to remember. I'm an engineer, producer, musician. Word of advice. First off, I'm thankful to my parents. I'm thankful to my mentors. I'm thankful for the people around me who really have uplifted me and put me in the position that I am in to grow. And other piece of advice is be humble. Definitely be humble. Don't grow an ego. Don't become arrogant. Don't become selfish. You know, be as open as you can. Stay in your path. Stay in your lane. Know who you are. Believe in God. You know, you'll meet a ton of egos out there, and that's something that really rocks me. I just can't stand it. So be humble and learn. That's really my best advice. Social media, D Jefferson Audio. That's my Instagram. I don't release music. Okay. But I will be eventually. All right. It'll come in time, but that'll be on my socials as well. So
when you're releasing music, will that be like songs that you've written?
It'll probably be some songs that are written or stuff that I've worked with other artists as well.
So are you singing, rapping? What are you doing?
I don't sing. I don't rap. It's funny, like all my friends or people around me tell me, like, yo, you got to sing. You got to rap. And it'll happen eventually, but that's not my forte. But definitely producing, you know, making songs, and producing at this point is more than just making a beat. You know, I'm an instrumentalist. Yeah. So, you know, releasing music that's the goal, to help create music.
Okay. Do you write too?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't write, but again, that's something that the Lord may show me eventually. That's something that may come down the line. So,
but you can score, right?
Like scores and like movie scores.
Yeah,
it's funny. Film and movie scores is something that has also been really inspiring to me. Like I love it. So that's something that may happen eventually in the future as well.
Okay.
Yep.
I see it happening, bro.
It'll happen.
I see it.
For sure, man. Appreciate you for having me.
For sure. All right, guys. It's your boy Nick Kayea saying it's a great day to be saved, great life to know Christ, and a great time to live the dream. This is the Respect My Genius podcast, where we are learning to become better creatives. We're learning to trust and believe in ourselves, and we're learning to build a web of connections. You guys be blessed. Have a great day. Make great decisions. And until next time, peace.
Peace.
Don't be mistaken about my grind. I can do this all the time. Greatness in me, so I shine. You're listening to one of a kind.